Sorry. Any apologies? No. Second, declaration of interest.
Members will be aware of the requirement under the Council's Code of Conduct to declare any personal or prejudicial interest in respect of any business to be considered at today's meeting. Such interest should be declared now or as soon as the councillor affected becomes aware that they have a personal or prejudicial interest in today's business. All members declaring an interest are required to state clearly what the interest is and to advise whether it's a personal interest or a personal and prejudicial interest as defined in the Code of Conduct. Any member declaring a prejudicial interest is required to leave the chamber for the duration of the business and can take no part in the proceedings. Members with a personal interest only may take part in the debate in any vote. If a personal and prejudicial interest is declared today that has not previously been disclosed and recorded, the councillor concerned will be required to complete and sign a declaration of interest form, which is available from committee support staff and online.
Thank you, Gary. Sorry, is anybody who would like to declare an interest? No? Okay, thank you. Urgent matters? No urgent matters. 4, we'll go to the minutes of the meeting held on the 29th of June. First of all, for accuracy, page 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. For matters arising, page 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. Thank you. Will someone move the correct, please? Julian and Tony, second it. Everybody in agreement? Nobody against, is that? Okay, thank you. We'll go to agenda item 5, traffic, parking and road. Oh no, sorry, Llangollen 2020 Castle Street Improvement Project. Brian, please.
Thank you. Yeah, bore da pawb, bore da everybody. Nice to see everybody. Yeah, single item agenda this morning. That's a cabinet brief, or virtually a single item agenda. The Llangollen 2020 project. I did go around Llangollen a few weeks ago, walking the route of the scheme with officers and some residents, and the comment was made: who wouldn't want to spend £1.7 million or thereabouts in their area, their town centre, to improve lots of things, and I think that was something that struck me from the walk around that I did there in Llangollen, and there was a lot of positivity on that particular day, which was good to see. We've got with us this morning Mike Jones and Emlyn Jones, the officers, and also the local members, Councillor Melvin Miles and Councillor Graham Timms. Both of those local members will have a few words to say shortly. Mike Jones will take us through the report pack. It's obviously been to cabinet brief where he had a virtual clean bill of health, which is always good to see. I've got a big interest in this project, as with everything that I deal with. I really want to see this happen. The local MP, the local MSs, and lots of people are in support of it. It's really going to be good to hopefully get cabinet support today, so that we can move off with the project and deliver it in the spring of next year. So if I could ask Mike Jones to pick up on the details in the report pack, the appendices, we'll have a better understanding of what the report's all about. Thank you, Mike.
Good morning all. Just got a presentation to run through on the project, so just bear with me. Okay, hopefully you can all see that okay on your screens. Okay, so firstly, just a bit of a background to the project. So goes back to sort of early 2018. Initially, there was a town centre working group, was the title given, where it was actually led by myself as chair and a number of other Denbighshire officers in attendance, together with members of the town council and the 2 county councillors for Llangollen. Then, as part of the community resilience corporate priority, and there was a change in approach a couple of months after that, where the Llangollen 2020 group were formed. And that group were comprised of the 2 county councillors and a couple of members of the town council. Then, not long after that, a feasibility study was carried out, specifically looking at Llangollen Town Centre and Castle Street and issues with traffic, parking and so on. The feasibility study was commissioned in May 2018, funded mostly by Cadwyn Clwyd, but also a contribution from Llangollen Town Council toward the feasibility study. Then there was some engagement carried out led by the 2020 group and their consultants Arcadis, and there were some events held in July and October of 2018, resulting in a total of 370 responses, and then the final feasibility study on the project was published in January 2019. And as I've said in the note at the bottom there, it's important to understand this isn't about the COVID active travel scheme being made permanent. It's a completely separate scheme, and then the scheme that, as you've just heard, has been in development for a number of years now. So in terms of the existing issues raised, and a lot of these came up through the feasibility study and the engagement that took place as part of that. Issues with traffic and parking congestion within the town, particularly on Castle Street, as that image there shows. Difficulties for pedestrians crossing Castle Street, for the flow of traffic, visibility in between parked vehicles and so on. This next image here, you can see, I mean, that illustrates that quite well. That's from 2015 from Google Street View, and you can see the pedestrians having to peer in between the parked vehicles to try and cross the road. What's always a challenge for Llangollen, of course, is that Castle Street is also the A542. It provides a link between the A5 trunk road, which is at the far end of that image you can see where the traffic lights are. And at the other end, you've got the A542 coming from the Horseshoe Pass and the A539 from Rhuaben. Other issues raised, poor condition of the public realm, narrow pavements. Again, I think as those images really show well as cluttered pavements with obstacles and so on in there. So, you know, considering it's such a busy pedestrian environment, really heavy footfall, particularly in the spring and summer. Some real issues there in terms of footway widths, pavement widths. So in terms of what's proposed, and these next 3 slides are a 3D visualization showing what the scheme would look like if it was implemented, to give a bit like an artist's impression, if you'd like. So as you can see there, pavements have been widened. So basically the road would be narrowed from 7.3 meters down to 6 meters in width, curb to curb. That allows the pavements to be widened equally, so that width gained by reducing the width of the road is shared equally, basically, between the 2 pavements. More crossing points put in, Yorkstone paving in combination with Berwyn slate. Also, 2 loading bays are proposed for Castle Street itself. So there's one there you can see by the Town Hall building. And then if I just go to the next slide, you can see the other one just in the sort of top part of the picture. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but that kind of area there. So, you know, and again, like I say, a much more pedestrian friendly environment, less on-street parking while still providing loading bays for businesses. In terms of the funding for the project, total estimated cost is 1.75 million, and this is a breakdown, as you can see, 782,000 in total of Denbighshire contribution toward the scheme, and the remaining amounts from the Welsh Government and various grants. So, as I alluded to earlier, there was some engagement carried out led by the 2020 group back in 2018. However, we'd received some correspondence saying that not everybody was aware of that engagement back then. And of course, it was 3 years ago and a lot's happened in that 3 years. So we took the decision to carry out a further period of engagement recently that commenced on the 15th of June, ran for a period of 3 weeks. There was a letter drop of approximately 2,000 letters to residents and businesses around Llangollen area. It was promoted on Denbighshire's social media accounts. There was an online questionnaire and also online on our engagement portal where people can basically or could view the plans and read details about the proposals as well as fill in the questionnaire online. We also had a 5-day public exhibition set up actually on Castle Street itself in this sort of second week of that 3-week consultation, which was I think week commencing 21st of June. We had paper questionnaires on hand as well. I think we gave out approximately 450 of them, which is a similar number to the number of visits that we recorded, as you can see that second to last bullet point there, in terms of people attending the public exhibition. And we also paid individual visits to as many businesses as we could along Castle Street and a couple of the side roads as well as part of that public engagement and while we were there doing the public exhibition. So in terms of responses to the engagement, I had 507 in total, as you can see, 322 via the online portal, 185 paper copies of the questionnaire that were returned to us. And then the split of that 507, again, as you can hopefully see there, 358 residents, 95 business owners, 32 visitors, 16 who were employed in the town but live outside of Llangollen, and 6 respondents didn't answer that question. There were basically a number of statements, and hopefully if you've had a chance to have a look at the engagement report within the appendices to the report, but essentially there was a question, there was a series of statements asking for people whether they agreed or disagreed with various elements of various proposals contained within the overall scheme. And then there was a question at the end essentially asking whether people thought the scheme was a good idea and supported most or all of the changes. So 40% total said that. The next option was the 24% in orange there of people who said that they think the scheme is generally a good idea, but proposed changes could be improved or modified. And then there was a further 18% who said that they don't think the scheme is generally a good idea, but they do support some of the individual changes. And lastly, another 18% shown in the yellow colour, who basically said they think the scheme is generally a good idea and they don't support any of the proposals put forward. In terms of split between non-business owners and business owners, so the orange are the non-business owners. So again, it's those sort of 4 statements that you just saw in the pie chart on the previous slide. So as you can see, in terms of the category of people saying the scheme is a good idea and they support most or all of the changes, 43% of non-business owners tick that option, but only 23.5% of business owners have chosen that. The next one, the scheme is generally a good idea, but the proposed changes could be improved or modified. 29.4% of business owners chose that one, 23% of non-business owners. And again, you can see for the next one, 20% of business owners saying the scheme is not a good idea, but it supports some elements as opposed to 17%. And then lastly, the category of saying the scheme is not a good idea and they don't support any of the proposals, 27% of business owners as opposed to 16.6% of non-business owners. So that's really people's views in terms of the sort of statements and the main, the view on the overall project. And as I said, there was a number of sort of statements about various elements of the scheme, but in terms of the qualitative feedback as well, and there was 2 sort of open text questions where people could give their views. These are listed in detail in Appendix B particularly, but I've just picked out the main ones for you really that came up the most on these next 3 slides. So the first one was the issue raised that the loading bays proposed for Castle Street and Market Street were for commercial vehicles only. A number of business owners raised concerns that they use their own vehicles to load and unload, service their businesses, and so they wouldn't be able to use those commercial bays. So as a result, we've changed that proposal now, and these are the amendments listed in Appendix A to the report, where now any class of vehicle will be able to use the loading bays. So what that means is both business owners can use their own vehicles to use the loading bays, and also customers can use the loading bays to load or unload goods. Second one there, concerns raised about the loss of the limited waiting short stay parking, or pop and shop parking as it's commonly called. Obviously, as I talked about on an earlier slide, one of the key principles of the scheme is to widen the pavements and make it easier for people to cross the road where they're not peering in between long line of parked vehicles. However, there is mitigation proposed as part of the project. So, for example, the 14 free short stay parking spaces in Market Street car park, these aren't brand new spaces, but they're existing pay and display spaces converted to short stay and free spaces. There's 2 disabled bays proposed in close proximity on Oak Street and Bridge Street, really near basically the Castle Street end of those 2 respective streets. There's the loading bays referred to, 2 on Castle Street and 1 on Market Street. So there were no loading bays before, so they would be provided as part of the scheme, and as we've just talked about, can be used by both businesses and customers loading or unloading goods. As part of the feedback, one of the comments was, can we provide some 2 short stay or some short stay spaces on Market Street? We can fit 2 in, so that's now been included in the amendments listed in Appendix A. And another thing we were asked is, can we have the loading bays not coming into force until 9:30, meaning that basically anybody can park there before that time, or similarly after 5 o'clock in the evening. So again, but the main reason being there's some sort of short stay pop and shop parking in the morning until the loading bay comes into effect from 8 until 9:30. Another big issue raised was the proposed width of Castle Street, and people saying it would be too narrow at 6 metres. I've included a quote here from Man Off the Streets 2, which basically says lane widths wider than 3 metres are not necessary in most urban areas carrying mixed traffic. And that's going to be balanced as well by the fact that what we're trying to do here is reduce the crossing distance for pedestrians crossing Castle Street, and also that we're essentially trying to reduce traffic speeds. And if you reduce the widths of lanes, it also reduces the speeds of traffic. The current COVID active travel scheme, which is in place, that is only 5.55 metres wide. So that has perhaps, I suppose affected some people's views of the scheme and thinking perhaps it's going to be a similar width to that. The current scheme as well has planters along one side of the road, and what that does, we've observed that people tend to stay further away from the planters than they would from a normal curb. So that's probably making the effective width even narrower than 5.5 in practice. But something that we have proposed as a change based on that feedback is that we're intending to now partially recess the 2 loading bays on Castle Street, further into the pavement. And the next point raised, people didn't agree with the proposed closure of Short Street, so we've withdrawn that element of the scheme from the scheme based on that feedback. A lot of people asking for environmental weight restriction. We agree with this, but what we're saying is it needs to be part of a comprehensive package looking at the longer term, the longer distance rather, signage, and things like sat-nav guidance for it to work effectively. So that's some work that we'd intend to start working on in the autumn in terms of developing that. The East Street, Parade Street 90-degree bend has been raised as an issue and potential pinch points there. So we're going to consider that as part of the forthcoming TRO process should Cabinet give approval to the scheme today. And also questions raised about providing additional parking around the town. Again, we agree with this as a principle, and what we should stress really, this project is phase 1. Should it go ahead, it's the substantial part of the project in terms of its value, in terms of the size of it, but there's a lot of other important phases that need to follow, such as the parking management around the town, active travel routes, the directional signage, and so on. So it would be looked at as part of that phase 2, and again is something we'd start looking at in this autumn. So that really wraps us up to the next step. So it should Cabinet give approval today, and basically we would look next to start the statutory consultation on the traffic regulation orders that are required. Construction contract would be able to be awarded once we're in a position to do so, and we've done the tender appraisals and so on. And we'd be looking to start construction ideally sometime in this September. Anticipate it would take 6 to 7 months to complete, so therefore completion around end of March 2022. And as I've said there, phase 2, as I just mentioned on the previous slide, parking management, active travel links particularly being looked at, and signage as part of that next phase. Okay, and that's it. Thank you.
Right, okay, thanks Mike. If I can just come back in quickly, leader. So I think it clearly demonstrates what Mike's run through here in this report, that, and for me, a very important thing, we've listened to residents, we've listened to businesses, and we have put compromises in the scheme. Obviously, we're not going to make everybody happy. That never happens anywhere, does it? But I believe that we have worked with the residents, we've listened to the businesses, and we've come up with some decent compromises. And that's not to say there isn't any manoeuvre for a little bit more fuel in the tank to maybe do another little couple of tweaks here and there, perhaps. I just wanted to make another quick mention about phase 2. Mike has touched on them, but the environmental weight restriction, that was something I certainly picked up when I went around the project, as I mentioned earlier, a few weeks back. And that's to see that we or often some,
if you could put
sorry?
the screen off it. I couldn't quite hear that, Brian. If you could put the screen off for a minute, please.
Okay. I didn't want to deprive people of my good looks, leader, but hopefully I'm coming through okay now.
Yeah, you look better and sound better now, Brian.
Oh, thank you very much. Then I'll go with that then. Yeah. So I don't know if you caught up to. I was just going to make a comment about phase 2. If we approve this morning what's in front of us, but phase 2, the environmental weight restriction survey, that was something that was picked up with me when I did my tour around Llangollen, and that will be something which will be very welcomed and very good to see. And depending on the result of the survey, it could be implemented during the next financial year. And another key element in phase 2 there is, and again, Mike's briefly touched on it, but car parking at the health centre in Llangollen. There is a cost implication there, not a massive cost implication, but that could release 100 and even up to 150 car park provision. So that's other good points that are coming along. So thank you, leader, and hopefully you can invite the local members to come in now.
Thank you, Brian, for that. Emlyn, did you want to add anything to what's been said by Mike? Can I move on to members?
Yeah, no, diolch yn fawr. No, I think Mike set it out really well there, very detailed presentation, hopefully. I think Cabinet, you know, there's a reassurance there, isn't there, that this has had significant community involvement. I'll just switch my video off because I think it's breaking up. It's had significant community involvement, local member and town council involvement, really detailed engagement and consultation work, not just, you know, reverting to online and you know, the odd day of a consultation, actually going into every business on that high street, and really detailed conversations with people and businesses around the project. And actually a reassurance that this is not steamrolling it through, that we've actually made significant changes following that consultation. So I know Brian's mentioned that already, but that's a really important point for us, because we wanted to make sure that that exercise was valuable and it meant something, and that we made changes following that. So yeah, that's as much as I need to add. Thank you, Diolch yn fawr, leader.
Thank you, Emlyn. I'll invite the 2 local members. Mel, do you want to go first this time, please?
Thank you, leader. Oh, it's nice to speak before Graham Timms. That's something new. So really, the consultation has, in fact, if you look at it, it's about approximately 2/3 to 1/3 in favour of the scheme in general, and especially when the amended parts are taken into account. Also, I mean, the town council has been very supportive of this scheme. I'm a member of the town council. We actually gave money at the very beginning for Arcadis to do their scoping study. And the town council have been kept updated all the way through this scheme by, you know, updates by Graham as chair of 2020. They've sent several letters of support into the council. There is in Appendix G, you'll see their latest one. Graham and I are obviously fully supportive of this scheme, and keeping it short, it would be a travesty, as Brian said earlier, that this 1.7 million couldn't be spent in Llangollen. It's been a long-standing complaint in the town that, oh, we don't get any investment from Denbighshire. Well, I think this will really quieten people down if you decide to go ahead with this, if you decide to approve this today. I think the main thing is for Cabinet to approve it today. Any delays would be problematical. I'd also like to thank the officers for the huge amount of work that they've done on this scheme. They've listened to everyone and they've come up with some great solutions. Thank you very much indeed to them. That's me. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Mel. As a town councillor, it's best possibly, Mel, that you declare an interest.
Sorry, I shall do. Many apologies.
Okay, he's declared an interest. Thank you, Mel. Graham Timms, please.
Well, just to follow on from Mel about the scheme very, very briefly. Llangollen 2020 was initially a locally led initiative to tackle long-standing problems of how a small market town can be changed from horse and cart to the modern day demands of travellers and so on. After the 2017 election, as elected members, we made it our priority to commit to seriously tackling this problem, working with the Town Council and the Chamber of Trade, Denbighshire County Council and Welsh Government to search for solutions. The Llangollen 2020 group was set up and terms of reference were agreed between partners towards the end of 2017. Over the last 4 years, there's been an emphasis in encouraging everyone to get involved to search for solutions and agree on a way forward. The 3 major consultations have been held, 2 in 2018 and 1 just a few weeks ago, identified areas where there's broad agreement, and the final scheme before you today includes these areas, but it also recognises the conflicting needs of specific groups. As Mike said earlier, the county has responded to the concerns of everyone who's participated in these sessions. We had no budget when we started, so we were delighted in 2018 that the Cabinet set aside 500,000 to go towards this, which came from a Welsh Government grant. So we made a start towards the cost of the scheme, which, as you know, is 1.75 million. If it's agreed today, it'll be the biggest investment in Llangollen for generations, and the quality of the materials will also ensure that its effects is felt for generations to come. It's a historic moment, demonstrating how an active community-driven scheme funded by DCC and Welsh Government grants can help solve problems and create a better place to live and work. Llangollen's problems will not entirely be solved by the scheme, and the report recognises the need to continue to work with the community to find solutions to parking as the next priority. Thankfully, you'll be pleased to know that's going to cost a lot less, but it will be time consuming and it will be difficult to find a compromise. I'd urge you as Cabinet members to agree with this proposal to transform Llangollen into a place that we can all be proud of. And like Mel, I'd like to say thank you very much to all of the officers that have been involved, and Brian Jones as lead member. And I'd also like to thank the members of the 2020 group, and especially I'm going to mention one by name, Robin Lovelock. She's been instrumental in driving this project from the start, and her dedication, energy and ability has inspired us all. So thank you to Robin as well.
Thank you both local members for that. Okay, I'll open this up now for questions from Cabinet members. First one was Tony Thomas, please.
Thank you, Leader. I'll keep my camera off because the sound quality this morning isn't fantastic, is it? So thank you, Mike and Brian, for that presentation, and also to the local members in Llangollen for it. My question is, could the proposed new loading bay on Castle Street outside the town hall be a recessed construction and offer all day 30-minute free parking to the businesses and residents? No doubt Brian can respond on that. Thank you.
Yeah, well, that's a good question, and I've already said I'm open to any last reasonable requests that we can look at and or improve. Actually, it is in the pack, as you probably know, Tony, about the recess bays on Castle Street. There's another one further up by the spa. But personally, I agree with you. I think this could be considered. You know, Tony, that my views on free parking, it doesn't meet with everybody in the authority. But yeah, it could be something that could be looked at. Certainly, from my point of view, I'd support what you've put forward there. And perhaps Mike could want to come in and just brush up on the technical issues of that. Mike.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Yeah, what I'll do, because in anticipation of discussion about the load and bay, I've got an image I'm just going to share with you now. Again, if you just please bear with me. Okay, can someone just give me a thumbs up? Hopefully you can see that. Okay, so as it stands, you can hopefully see the existing curb line. So this is an image taken from Google Street View a few years ago. Now, as the proposals were advertised recently, we were in this location going to be narrowing the road down, therefore widening the pavements. And the red line it's only indicative, but essentially the red line that you can hopefully see is where the new curb line would have been. Based on the feedback from the engagement, what we're now proposing, and that's what's included in an Appendix A, is that we would essentially keep the load and bay against the existing curb line, as you can see. However, there has been the question raised about could the load and bay be recessed even more, and that's what I've tried to indicate with the green line there, because essentially when I say recess it even more, there was an image that was circulated showing it basically a car's width in from the proposed new curb line. That's what that green line is trying to show. As you can probably see, there could be some issues there because of the location of the tree and the tree roots and so on. I mean, we can see even on that image, we can just about see that the footway is lifted, the pavement is lifted in that location. However, you know, certainly, you know, we can look to move that in further from the existing curb line. We just need to do a bit more work on that, looking at things like underground services and also considering width for footways, because the land behind the tree, and that's what I don't know if you can make out, there's a line of a more red coloured block paving that actually delineates the highway boundary. So the land behind is actually town council owned land, and it is full of a lot of the goods and also A-boards and those kind of things belonging to the shops that are there. And then this was the second issue, and that's the sort of physical work. The second issue is, can it be made as, you know, so say 30-minute limited waiting? Yeah, you know, that's something that could be done. There's pros and cons to doing it. You know, essentially it could be something that's on a time shared basis. It does make the signage quite confusing. We've found that where we've done this kind of thing elsewhere, but yes, of course it can be done. It, you know, it can do other things as well. Like, you know, you can find out that perhaps there's less space going to be available for loading generally, because of course it would only be a shorter window, and it, of course, like all these things, it's important that there's regular enforcement as well for these things to operate effectively, so you don't get situations like we had before where you got same vehicles parked all day in parking bays and blocking up spaces for hours. So, you know, in summary, yes, it's something that can be looked at in terms of the type of restriction, most definitely, and in terms of the physical works, yeah. Again, you know, we can look to move that in. Whether it be as far as a green line, that would all depend, as I say, on those further technical investigations.
Okay, well, thanks for that, Mike. Perhaps then if we can, and as I've already said, it is within the report pack there, as an acknowledgement that it's been brought up. If you could go away with your colleagues and firm up on that, and then in the first instance come back to myself and the local members to see if we can do that and move that on a bit further, and I suppose another improvement. So thanks, Mike.
Brian, just to formalise that, are there any members of Cabinet who would not be able to support that suggestion?
Chair, I'm quite happy with the suggestion. I just don't want, I wouldn't want to see anything being done that would actually necessitate the tree being removed. That would be my only condition.
Absolutely, Julian, and that's one of my big, you know, I've sat by the tree, I've licked an ice cream by this tree, and I love the tree. So most definitely from me, we would really have to be very tender, loving care to the tree. Absolutely.
Okay, with that caveat, then I'm just asking Gary for advice. Is that just incorporated into the scheme as a consideration following today's discussion, Gary, or how do we?
Yes, I think if officers are committing that they'll take that away and look at it and do more work, as Mike described, in respect of that, then that can be noted in the minutes.
Okay, happy with that, Tony?
Yes, thank you, Leader. Thank
Yeah,
you for that, Brian and Mike.
Okay, thanks for that. I can see hands from a distance. I'll have a look. Bobby Feely, please.
Thanks, Leader. Sorry, you took me by surprise. I didn't know I was next in line.
I haven't gone to the list. I don't know who came first, so I just saw your name.
Okay, never mind. I'm here now. Can I just say, can I echo the local member's point about a great amount. It's great that that amount of money is going to be spent in Llangollen to improve it further than it has been improved already. I have to say it is somewhere I visit quite regularly. I live about 15 minutes away on the sort of Llangollen side of Ruthin, if you like. And it does at the moment indeed look lovely without the improvements. And I love the patchwork on the bridge, how stunning that looks, and all the improvements around the war memorial. But as you obviously know, over the last few days, we have had quite a few emails and so on with people who would like to make improvements. But I have to say that most of the things that have been brought up with us have indeed been covered in Mike's presentation and supplementary remarks by the two local members. We were the loading bay issue, which Tony has already been brought up, is one of them, and it sounds like there will be a solution to that. The tree has been brought up most definitely, and you have that under control. There was a worry around Short Street in one of the emails and whether or not it should be opened up, and it looks from what I see in the appendix as if that's got a temporary opening up to see how it works. And you've also covered the weight restriction aspect and that it's being looked into. The one thing I will say about Llangollen that is difficult and has been for many years is the parking. And although you say 14 free spaces are being given in Market Street, it's not all about money, it's about spaces. And at times when Llangollen is busy, and Llangollen is a very busy, buzzy town, it's full. Market Street is full, and it is quite difficult to find parking. But once again, I have to say, we had issues with regard to the health centre when that was brought in a few years back, right at the start of my cabinet days, when the road was improved and the access to the health centre was improved with a crossing and traffic lights. And there is an area in that direction where parking could be made at a later date, perhaps in your second stage of the development. So overall, I would like to welcome the scheme with all the amendments, and hopefully it will go ahead and improve Llangollen even more than it is already.
Okay, thank you for that, Bobby. Mark Young, please.
Thank you, Leader. I'll turn my camera off if that's okay. So yeah, I echo all the positive comments. When you read the report, the amount of work gone in is really fantastic from local members, community members and officers. And the fact that there's going to be a phase 2 which can pick up some of the concerns makes me want to support this because, as what's been said, you're not going to please everyone, but I think the commitment to look at ways of ticking all the concerns off one by one is great. But I've just got two questions, if I may, and it's about the start date. So if we approve it, it's starting in September. We know businesses and shops have been struggling, and we know also that Christmas is a key time. So I'd be interested in how we're going to make sure the impact of these works aren't going to affect the trade during the Christmas period, please. And the other question is on the risks. You talk about a significant number of people who are opposed, but then you say you're going to have thorough monitoring of the project. So what does this mean? I'm hoping that means any issues will be dealt with during the project. So just those two questions, but I'll be supporting, Leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Mike, do you want to respond to those two questions?
Oh, well, yes. Thank you, Leader. Yeah, so the start date, as I said, we're looking at this September, probably closer toward the end of September. The nature of this kind of project is that it is quite painstaking compared to constructing a road and, say, a more rural location, away from properties and certainly away from retailers. So it's important, obviously, as we do this work, that we maintain access as much as we can. So that means close liaison with businesses, and to that aim, one of the things that we're stipulating in the tender documents is that the successful contractor will provide something called a business liaison officer. So their role will be speaking to businesses on a daily basis to make them aware of the sort of forward program for the days and weeks ahead for the contractors, so that they can fit in and around all the sort of loading and servicing requirements and keeping businesses open. That regular communication is fundamental to this type of project, having been involved in this type of project before. And similarly, that's part of the second point, second question you raised about monitoring as well. In an ideal world, there'd be a time we could do this where we didn't have any real impact on retailers, but we're trying to do it through the autumn and winter so that we obviously avoid spring and summer. It's also to do with the grant conditions as well of needing to finish by end of March. As for Christmas, I mean, there won't be a 2-week shutdown, but that's more the sort of Christmas, New Year sort of period. Realistically, there isn't going to be an opportunity to stop the work any sooner before Christmas, as in that sort of Christmas shopping running, because of the amount of work that needs to be done and already quite a tight timescale. But as I said, it's about us liaising closely with businesses in the way that I've described.
Yeah. And if you remember, Mike, when we did the walk around, one of the coffee shop owners did challenges on that. How would we implement it? And I can remember you going through the brief traffic management setup we'd have, and the fact that on Castle Street it would be done in manageable chunks. And if the communication's good to the businesses, the shop owners, yeah, bit of disruption, but it would work. It will work if everyone's on the same hymn sheet. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Julian, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, not too much to add. I think most of it's probably been said by other speakers, but just to reaffirm that these issues have been around in Llangollen for some considerable time, and it's very good that we're actually getting round now to finally addressing these. The scheme itself has been in development and gestation for some considerable time. I know it has obviously the support of the local members and the town council. I suppose any change of this nature inevitably is not going to be universally popular. I think we've shown from the presentation and the papers that we have been prepared to adapt the proposals where it's possible so to do. So certainly I would be supporting this to go ahead.
Thank you, Julian. Hill, did you want to make a comment on this?
No, I'm just observing from distance. I mean, I find it quite hard to get involved in the detail of a town that I don't know really well. As in, I know it as a visitor, but I don't know the ins and out, and that's really difficult. I think it's for the local members to feed in on that. Obviously, the only thing I will say is we've touched on loading bays today, and I'll just sort of check with Mike Jones based on my own experience in Ruthin, where Bobby will remember, and I think you, Leader, as well, where we had a situation where we had a loading bay put on the top of town for a pub on the hill, and it really didn't work because you had people rolling barrels down hills and stuff, and I think, the one lesson I can take from that is that if the local members are happy and they've checked it out, it must be okay. So, you know, obviously the local members know the area very well, but we made mistakes. Well, it was before my time, wasn't it, Mike? But there were mistakes made at that time when we had to change a whole scheme and yellow lines at that time. And the question that I'm asking is, have you given due diligence to what the look, or the impact of the look will be on the, you know, the town of Llangollen? Is there any surprises that you'll suddenly find yellow lines or tabs as we found in Rhythm popping up? Really is the question, I think, Brian, to the team.
Brian, did you want to come back on that?
Yeah, I think they're valid points there from Councillor Hilders Roberts, because you can never ignore past experiences, even if they're not in the same town. Again, I keep mentioning that walk round that I went on. It was very informative. The people that were on it were direct and to the point. They were happy if we were going to compromise on things. The loading bays are a point that they weren't against. There was the comment about, could we recess them in? As far as down the line, Mike can probably input on his past experiences. But as a general comment, if there was a major flaw in the scheme that we can't see today, and this question was asked on the day when I was at Llangollen, if there was a major flaw that come to light, it would be looked at and a solution would have to be found. But I don't think there's major flaws in it, because everyone that's crawled over it, and even the people that are not 100%, haven't been 100% behind the scheme, but have mellowed now, and I think there's a vast majority of people on board. No one's come up with mega flaws that they can see. So there's been a big input, and on the basis of that, there shouldn't be anything nasty in the castle yard, as they say. But if Mike wants to add on to that.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. And I'll just add to that, in terms of the visual impact, I mean, we've involved the council's conservation officer from an early stage in the design process, and the yellow lines, specifically to them, we're proposing that they're 50 mil instead of narrower, the half width yellow line, and they're also in the paler yellow, the primrose yellow, so it reduces their visual impact. And a good thing with this project, of course, we've had the 3D visualization as well, which gives, you know, a fairly good representation of what the scheme would look like if implemented.
Thank you, Mike. Just one thought before I shut up, really, is that from the previous experience we had of the COVID scheme in Rhythm, when it was when there hadn't been a situation. It was on paper that a HTV could turn into Market Street in Rhythm, and it was all the drawings suggested they could. When we, as 3 local members, stood on the street, that HTV took out the tree, took out a bollard, and then got over the pavement and then got back on the road. So all I'm saying is, if there's any tight corners knowing Llangollen, local members, just for your own experience, please get a HGV to do the turning before it becomes permanent. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, thank you for that, Hugh. Before I open up for questions, can I just thank the 2 local members for their vision and leadership on this scheme. I know it's been really difficult, and as Julian alluded to, the fact that when changes are suggested, there will obviously be a reaction and response, not always a positive one. And it's important, therefore, that officers of the authority respond to points which have been raised, which makes members of the public or businesses feel uncomfortable about it. And I think on this particular occasion, the appendices, the officers have gone out of their way to respond to the issues raised and the concerns. Given your point, Hill, that things might raise during the project which might emerge, so a word of warning there was helpful. But I think as Cabinet, we have to be assured at this point that officers have reacted well, and also importantly, when they haven't been able to accommodate concerns which have been raised, they've explained the reason why, and that's really important. The second point I'd like to make is that it's really important for us as a council that we have engaged and consulted as widely as we can. And I, again, feel assured that that has taken place. The impact of the consultation doesn't always please everybody either, but the fact that we've gone out of our way to engage with as many people as possible does help us in our decision making today. I, like many, have received responses, particularly from businesses, and it's really important that businesses benefit from this investment and do not lose out. So again, officers have responded positively to that. We're not all going to agree, and that's the case, but hopefully this level of investment, Llangollen, as Graham Timms alluded to, is quite a historical day to be able to invest. And I remember sitting in the first meeting with the two local members, yourself, Brian, and some officers. We were discussing a substantial shortfall, and we were all looking at each other as to where this funding could probably come from. So here we are today with all the work the authority's done, and we've been able to allocate funds from different sources, Welsh Government in particular, and ourselves, to make this project actually work. And I think that's got to be good news for Llangollen. Yes, it is the jewel in the crown of Denbighshire. Yes, it's a really lovely place to visit, but we need to make it better for the future. So I'm fully supportive of this. And I'd also like to take this opportunity of thanking you, Brian, as a lead member. You've really got into Llangollen on quite a few occasions and met with the people direct, so you know exactly what the issues were, and for officers for working with you to put this scheme before Cabinet today. And I just needed to make that point. So I'll ask other members if they want to come in. Meirig, did you want to come in, please? Meirig?
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Mr Cadeirydd. Camol, yn arw iawn yma. Un o ddau o bethau, os gai wneud sylw, a bore da i Mike hefyd, adroddiad gynhwysfawr a diddorol iawn. Dwi falch hefyd o weld bod ne ddau wrth neuadd y dre. O Mike wedi dangos llun yn doedd o bobl yn ceisio croesi gan bod nhw'n gafod edrych heibio fan a lori ac yn y blaen. Wel, os rowch chi y pethau yma mewn bai, wel, mae'r ffordd yn glir wedyn, a mi allwch chi weld heibio. Ydyn, dwi'n falch o weld bod hwnne yn cael ystyriaeth. Hugh Hildrich yn sôn am fod yn ofalus pen da chi'n gwneud tro o un stryd i'r llall. Da ni wedi cael y profiad yna yn cymeriadol, cofiwch, lle roedd y llyfr yn hollol anghywir. Mae'r rhaid i chi roi cynnig ar lori neu fys i drio gweld allan nhw'n wneud y tro, achos dydy'r llyfrau ddim bob tro yn gywir. Y trydydd peth, Mr Cadeirydd, ar tudalen 17, neu'r ail ar 15, mae gennym ni dalfyriad yn y Gymraeg, beth bynnag, LC. Mae'n deud cyfalaf y cyngor a chyllu grant LC a fydd angen cael ei wario. A'i Llywodraeth y Senedd ydy'r talfyriad i fod. Mae'n siŵr bod ar ei fath yn Saesneg. Mae Senedd ddyle fo fod ac nid be oedd o dwch, y cynulliad. Mae'r enw di newid, yn dydi. Diolch yn fawr.
Diolch, Meirig. Cwestiwn efo pwynt ôl yna, da, jyst eglurhad. Ie, fedrwn ni roi Senedd o Dirwan, ynda. Fedrwn ni ystyried hwnna. Diolch ti, Meirig, am hynny. Any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you, Brian. Are you happy to come back, please?
Sorry, I missed you there, Leader.
Are you happy to come back and take us through recommendations, please,
Yes,
Brian?
Certainly, yes. So the recommendations are at 3.1 that Cabinet considers the report and approves the implementation of the Llangollen 2020 Castle Street Improvement Project, including the amendments listed in Appendix A, which resulted from the recent public engagement feedback and which have been agreed with the local members. The committee confirms it is read, understood, and taken into account the wellbeing impact assessment at Appendix C as part of its consideration.
Thank you for that, Brian. Is there a seconder? Tony seconder. Okay. Is there anybody against this proposal? No. Any abstentions? No, so everybody's for it. Okay, thank you all for that, and thank you, Brian, again, and local members for your participation in this. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 6, finance report. Julian, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Hopefully I shouldn't take too long this morning. There hasn't been a great deal of movement since last month's report. I will crave your indulgence a little bit longer because later on, because there is an urgent item and a further recommendation which I need to bring in, but I'll come to that in a moment. In terms of the normal reporting process, in terms of services, the projected overspend has moved only slightly from what we were projecting last month, and is now a projected overspend of £748,000 for the reasons we went through last month, primarily due to known issues with regards to out of county placements and pressures within the waste budget. In terms of schools, the current projected position is a credit balance of just shy of £3.5 million, which is down from just over £5.5 million, which we started the financial year with. That was not an altogether a surprise, because as we reported, when we reported that significant positive change in the position at the end of the financial year, was down to a significant amount of one-off Welsh Government grant funding, and that's now obviously being spent within schools. There's a small underspend of around about 124,000 projected in the non-delegated schools budget as well. In terms of the housing revenue account, on the revenue side of things, there's a decrease in balances projected of just over £1.1 million. That's about £500,000 higher than we were originally budgeting for, but that's down to a planned increase in revenue contributions into the capital plan for the HRA. In terms of the major capital projects, which are contained in the Appendix 4, again, nothing significant to update members upon with regards to those. They all largely remain on time and on financial course as well. So there's nothing that I need to flag up at this point to members. So if I turn to the urgent item, there was an item which came to the last strategic investment group in relation to the former Prestatyn Library site, in terms of proposal coming through our housing department to demolish the current building and construct 14 one-bedroom apartments for social rent on the site, with 2 ground floor commercial units as well. The overall scheme comes in at a value of £4.3 million, which is funded £2.9 million from our own HRA and £1.4 million from Welsh Government's social housing grant. Because of the timing, we need to go out to tender. I am intending that we will bring back the formal decision in September before the contract is extended in the September meeting, but we do need agreement to go out to tender on this particular scheme for timing reasons, and therefore I would be looking to Gary for a form of wording to say something along those lines, assuming members are happy as a second recommendation. I think that's probably all I wanted to say at this point. I don't know whether Steve, whether you wanted to add anything before we went to questions?
Yeah, just a couple of things. In the report, it just mentions the COVID grants. Just to, as the latest update, we have just submitted the Q1 income loss claim, and that's £2 million for Q1. Now, we are expecting that to be the high point, if you like, of the claims, because things are opening up now, and obviously leisures, this was up to obviously the end of June, so from July onwards we'd expect that to be a lot smaller. So that's just an update on the claims. I just need to apologise as well for not including the details of the Prestatyn library in the report. That was my fault, my omission, so apologies for that.
Okay, thank you for that, Steve. Any questions from Cabinet members on this report? No? Okay, it seems as if only yesterday we were discussing the finance report. Last time.
Yeah, it's not been long, so that's why it's not been much movement.
No. Okay. Nothing from Cabinet members. Any other members with a question? No. Okay, thank you. Julian, I'll ask Gary just to word the recommendation as you suggested there, if that's okay.
Yep.
Gary, please.
Yeah, I'd suggest the following, which is that Cabinet approve the commencement of the tender process in respect of the proposed redevelopment of the former Prestatyn library and the construction of 14 one-bedroom apartments for social rent and 2 ground floor commercial units.
Okay, thank you.
Sounds good to me. So I'm happy to make that 3.2, and 3.1 then is members note the budget set for 21-22 and progress against the agreed strategy.
Okay, those 2 recommendations have been proposed by Julian. Will someone second them? Mark, thank you. Everybody in agreement, or is there anybody against those proposals? Nobody, no abstentions. Okay, everybody's in agreement. Thank you. And finally, agenda item 7 is the Cabinet Forward Work Plan. Next Cabinet, 21st September. Gary, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Since the publication of the papers, there's been an addition to the Cabinet Forward Work Programme for September, an item to come in respect of the Denbighshire Learning Disability Community Living Schemes, a temporary extension and retendering of existing contracts. And then in December, we have, in addition to what's in there, Prestatyn Flood Defence Scheme, to make a recommendation to Council to agree funding for the schemes. And in January, the Central Rail Floods Defence Scheme, again, to make a recommendation to Council to agree funding for the schemes.
Okay.
Those are additions to the Forward Work Programme you've got in your papers.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Any comments from Cabinet members on this agenda? No. Okay, that's it. I can't find another agenda item for you. So thank you all for your presence today. Have a good break over the summer and we'll see you in early autumn. Diolch yn fawr i chi gyd. Thank you.